Hey guys, Joel here, and today wanted to talk to you a little bit about the world stage and having a generally good idea of what's going on in the world. So there are some really good resources for this if you don't have a lot of time. One of the guys that I listen to that he kind of does a lot of his own research and passes that on is a guy, I think he has a YouTube channel, but I follow him on Patreon, and it's Viking Preparedness. The guy's name is Pastor Joe Fox, and he's not real preachy, so don't worry about that if that's a concern to you. And he kind of covers some stuff. He's been giving some focus to the Russia-Ukraine thing lately. If you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, that's a very good example of why it's important to know what's going on. In a nutshell, the U.S. is at least verbally backing Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine are kind of like rah-rah-rahing at each other again. And there is, while it's vague and it's somewhat, it's probably a long shot, but there is a chance that something kicks off there and the U.S. actually comes and puts troops in or near Ukraine, and we actually have a direct U.S.-Russia conflict. I don't know why, but the Democrats have had it out for Russia since even before the Trump presidency. So who knows what will happen there, but it's a possibility, right? And we need to be familiar with that. One of the things Pastor Joe Fox highly recommends, and I have taken that advice, is you need a world map, and you need to be generally familiar or able to quickly become familiar with what certain places in the world look like and where certain strategic places in the world are. So seas, oceans, port capabilities, straits and limitations in supply chains, and then where are certain of these nations. So when people say, hey, this is going on, or you hear in the news that such and such is happening in this part of the world, you can go and look on a map and go, oh, okay, I can see what's going on there. Ukraine, for some reason, I thought Ukraine was on the eastern side of Russia. It's not. It's on the western side of Russia, basically right up against Europe. So if Russia goes into Ukraine and there's a big conflict there, some of the surrounding nations around Ukraine may feel obligated to get involved in that. And some of those nations are or might be NATO nations, which the U.S. is part of NATO, and we have an agreement to help each other out. So see how that can quickly cascade into being an actual situation, right? And some, not all, the vast majority of your preps should just be basic generalized preps for things like hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and general unrest. Things like, I don't know, a fake pandemic that they shut the whole country down for and nobody gets to work for 6 weeks to 6 months, or even a year. I know some of you guys, depending on where you live, are still in lockdown. Move to a place that's not stupid and you won't have that problem like Florida here. But there are, lots of different things, whether it's political, whether it is, actual real world situations that can cause problems. But just being generally aware of the world stage is a really good idea. So I will put in the show notes here. It's not actually a show, so it's just be in the comments of this post. I will put 2 references because I can't think of the exact names and I don't want to butcher them. But one is basically they recommend that you do what they call an area study, being familiar with your immediate area, and then they have like a daily or a weekly update that gives kind of a quick snapshot of the world and any kind of hotspots and things like that going on. And then another one is a little bit more politically based on the conservative side, but they have a one that they get way more into the weeds because based on this guy's experience, a lot of times people have no idea how things like, the batteries that go in the electric cars that we use are made in these countries, and how does this shortage in this place in Africa affect this shortage in this place in China affect how we get our electric cars, for instance, right? And how that affects markets, how that affects a lot of other things. So he gets into a lot of that. He's very knowledgeable in kind of the second, third, and fourth order effects of how things go. And if you don't know what that means, that basically means every decision you make, kind of the unintended consequences of like laws and things like that is a good place. A lot of people understand that, right? They pass a law that says, we should do this. And then that law that new thing that they did is used in a bunch of different areas that they never intended for it to be used in, right? And it's like, oops, we didn't think about that. Those are second and third order effects. And so the farther it gets from the point, the more you go second, third, fourth order effects. There's not like, it's just this idea, this concept, right? It's things happen based on the decisions that we make at a low level that sometimes have big effects on the big level. And we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of how things on the world stage affect those things, and we need to be aware of how things in a local manner affect those things. Generally, the farther you get from a localized problem, the less it's recognized and noticeable, right? And that's generally a good thing, but it's still a good idea to be aware. So I would encourage you, be aware, have the ability to quickly become aware of world events, and do not obsess about it. I don't like obsessing about things that are far away and probably not going to happen, but it's a good idea to have a general awareness and a general idea so that you can kind of forecast and foresee things coming a little bit farther away than your average person.